Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're really digging into something fundamental, something that shapes us all, historical heritage.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
We've got some great sources here that help unpack it, what it actually is, the different kinds, why it matters globally, and importantly, the real challenges and, well, responsibilities involved in keeping it safe.
Right.
Our mission today, to pull out the key insights so you can really get a handle on not just the definition, but why this stuff, this heritage, truly resonates. Okay, let's get into it.
So first off, our sources make it really clear that historical heritage is way more than just old buildings or artifacts.
Right.
They define it as the whole picture.
Yeah.
The cultural, artistic, architectural, even the social values that a nation sort of carries from its past right into the present. It's like a deep source of identity,
Oh.
of belonging.
That's a key distinction, isn't it? Not just what was, but what lasts. How does that connection actually, work for people and societies day to day?
Exactly. It's how we connect with our roots, discover this richness that defines us, and ultimately figure out our place in the bigger picture. The sources are pretty blunt. Without that connection, societies don't just lose facts. They risk losing their cultural bearings, becoming sort of adrift, maybe,
Right.
unable to really grasp the present or, chart an authentic path forward. It's this vital buildup of knowledge, of experience that just has to be passed on. Preservation is key.
So it's like a cultural amnesia if we lose that thread. I think like traditional buildings, folk stories, old documents, art. These aren't just museum pieces, are they? They actively build national unity, a shared memory.
Absolutely. They're the very fabric of a nation's unique character. And, when you think about figures who've woven incredible patterns into that fabric, both for Turkey and globally, well, names like Mevlana jump out.
Right, the poet.
His mystical poetry had this amazing global reach.
Right.
Or Mimar Sinan, an architectural giant. His mosques basically reshaped city skylines.
Incredible structures.
And then there's Yunus Emre, whose folk poetry, though simple, championed humanism. Hatice Bektaşeveli, the philosopher emphasizing tolerance. Piri Reis, the map maker. His maps just blew people away back then. Evliya Çelebi, documenting 17th century life through his travels. And Nasreddin Hoca, the wisdom in those funny stories, right? Their influence really goes far beyond any one country.
It's amazing how deep that richness runs, especially thinking about Turkish historical heritage specifically. Our sources really emphasize its massive scope all the way from Central Asia to Anatolia. Written works, incredible buildings, crafts, traditions.
Yeah, you see it so clearly in the architecture from the Seljuk and Ottoman times, the mosques, schools, palaces, those roadside inns, the caravanserais. They're not just buildings, they're statements,
Yeah.
deep cultural expressions.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same with the literature. You've got the sophisticated divan stuff, but also the folk poetry, which is just as powerful in its own way.
And that reach goes beyond just things you can touch, right? It gets into the foundations of identity itself, like through epics and mythology. What about the cultural values? How do they fit in?
Well, the sources highlight these core values like hospitality, solidarity, courage. They're not just ideas. They're living parts of the heritage. Indispensable, really, for understanding Turkey's past and passing its essence forward. And all this richness naturally leads us to think about Anatolia's role on a world stage.
Yeah, that richness kind of forces you to look bigger, doesn't it? Anatolia's global significance. I mean, this land has been home to so many civilizations.
Yeah.
Hittites, Phrygians, Lydians, Romans, Byzantines, Ottomans. It's almost like a historical compass for humanity.
That's a great way to put it. A key thing from our sources is that Anatolia's heritage isn't just important for Turkey, it's massive for the whole world. This is where huge events happened. Major cities grew. Art, science, philosophy, they really took off here. Think about places like Ephesus, Hagia Sophia, Cappadocia. They're not just Turkish sites, they're world heritage for everyone because of their architectural, religious, cultural depth.
And it really hits home how systems we take for granted started there. Like the Lydians, you mentioned them.
Yeah.
They were the first to use money. That's huge.
It's a fascinating detail, isn't it? Played a massive role in trade development. Our sources basically say Anatolia's packed with clues for understanding all of human history, which makes saving it, well, everyone's responsibility, really. And this kind of pushes back against the idea that heritage only matters locally.
That's interesting. So why should someone, I don't know, living in Brazil feel connected or responsible for a site in Turkey? What makes it universal?
What really comes through is that every piece of history, wherever it is, tells us something about our shared human story. Look at Göbekli Tepe. That's not just important for Şanlıurfa. It's a game changer for archaeology worldwide, totally shifting how we see early civilization. Or Hagia Sophia, deeply significant for both Christianity and Islam.
Right. Two major world religions.
Exactly. So these places naturally draw global interest, which fuels tourism, academic research. And because they matter to everyone, it means we need international teamwork to protect them. It's like everyone has a stake in this. We all need to claim some ownership.
But even with that universal value, saving these places is really tough, isn't it? What are the main hurdles?
Oh, it's definitely not easy. The sources lay out a whole bunch of challenges. You've got natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, floods. Then there's outright destruction from wars, and even just uncontrolled building, urbanization, slowly erasing things.
And ironically, tourism itself can be a threat.
Yeah, exactly. Too much foot traffic, lack of controls. It can cause real physical damage. That's the irony.
And it's not just the obvious physical threats, right? What about other obstacles, maybe less visible ones?
Good point. There are big resource problems. Not enough money, not enough trained experts. Political instability in a region can totally derail conservation work. And sometimes the local communities themselves might not fully grasp the importance. Maybe they use an old structure for something else instead of protecting it.
Ah, okay.
Which just highlights how crucial education and awareness campaigns are. The overall solution, the sources suggest, has to involve everyone, international bodies, governments, NGOs, using technology, working together to make sure these places last.
That idea of working together seems to extend beyond just the big organizations. Our sources really stress the individual's role, too. It's not all on government.
Absolutely. They put a lot of weight on just conscious behavior from individuals. Like when you visit a site, don't trash the place, don't leave litter, definitely don't carve your name on anything. It sounds basic, but it's about respect.
And it's more than just not doing harm, isn't it? How can people be more like active guardians?
Well, people can talk about it, tell others, they can teach kids about respecting history, use social media to raise awareness that can be powerful. Our sources even mention volunteering for digs or restoration work as a really direct way to contribute. The main idea is shifting from just being a tourist and observer to being a guardian. Because these traces of the past, they only make it to the future if people now care enough to protect them, which naturally brings us to groups like UNESCO.
All right, UNESCO. Their World Heritage List is probably what most people know. How does that list, and what else they do, actually help protect sites internationally?
That list is huge, yeah. It identifies sites that have universal value, which instantly puts them on the global radar and encourages countries to work together to save them. But UNESCO does more than just list things.
Okay.
They provide funding, technical know-how, expert teams to help countries with conservation. There's standards and criteria for protection. They push for more thoughtful management of countless sites.
Are there criticisms, though?
Yeah, there are. Some people say there isn't enough oversight sometimes, or that politics can play a role in what gets listed or not. These are valid points.
Right.
But overall, having an organization like UNESCO focused on promoting, protecting, and passing on heritage is incredibly valuable. It's effective and, honestly, necessary.
So, thinking about this broad idea of heritage, do our sources break it down into different types? And is one type harder to protect than others?
They do, generally into three main kinds. First, you've got tangible heritage. That's the physical stuff, old buildings, monuments, archaeological sites, things you can touch.
Got it.
Then there's natural heritage. These are natural places with historical or cultural importance, like specific forests, mountains, unique landscapes.
Okay, tangible, natural, and the third.
That's intangible heritage. This is the stuff without a physical form, passed down through people, language, traditions, music, dance, rituals, stories. And this one, according to the sources, is seen as the trickiest to preserve.
So, because it's not a solid object, because it lives in people, that makes it more vulnerable. Why is it harder than saving, say, an old castle?
That's exactly it. It doesn't have a concrete structure, so it can just fade away if people stop doing it, or the way it's passed down gets broken. Think about traditional crafts or specific folk dances, local music styles, oral histories. They only exist as long as people actively practice them, teach them, keep them alive. And modern life throws up challenges. Modernization, globalization. Younger generations might drift towards other things. Some traditions might start to feel irrelevant or just get forgotten.
So, preserving intangible heritage needs a different approach, more dynamic maybe, like getting it into schools, recording things, holding festivals.
Absolutely. Those are the kinds of things needed. Recording it, teaching it, celebrating it through events. These are crucial to keep that cultural richness and identity alive. And, this whole conversation points to something deeper. Heritage isn't just about looking back. It actually shapes the future.
Now that's a powerful idea. So it's not just history lessons, but an active force in our present.
Precisely. How people lived in the past, their art, how they planned cities, their belief, all that stuff feeds into how our world works today. And if we study history, the events, the structures, we can learn from them. Hopefully avoid making the same mistakes again, right?
Hopeful.
Essentially, heritage is this bridge carrying cultural identity and wisdom forward. A society that really knows its past has a much stronger footing as it steps into the future. The sources really frame it as both a teacher and a guide.
And you really see that teacher guide role in Anatolia being such a cradle of civilizations. That influence must be baked into modern Turkey's culture.
Oh, deeply. The sources give great examples, like written laws from the Hittites. They contributed to how legal thinking developed. Echoes we still see, Roman roads and aqueducts, huge lessons in urban planning.
Right.
And the Ottoman Empire, of course, left its mark everywhere: architecture, food, music, even the language people speak today.
It's wild to think that words we use, or maybe a family recipe, could be a direct line back thousands of years.
It really is. And another point the sources make is that Anatolia's mix of religions and cultures historically fostered a kind of tolerance. So yeah, these ancient civilizations didn't just leave ruins. They left deep imprints on how life is lived now, and that influence is ongoing.
And that deep influence definitely connects to something very current, like tourism. These rich sites obviously draw visitors, but that impact, it cuts both ways, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. On the plus side, heritage sites are huge tourism draws. You mentioned Cappadocia earlier. People go for the amazing landscape, sure, but also the historic cave churches, the underground cities, that unique architecture. Sites like that bring in tourist money, which helps the local economy, funds jobs, and it creates opportunities for people from different cultures to interact and learn. That's all positive.
But
Right.
there's always a but, isn't there? That need for sustainable preservation. How do we stop tourism from loving these places to death?
That is the million-dollar question, and the sources really wrestle with it. Tourism brings visibility, promotion, money for restoration, all good things. It supports local communities. But the dark side is real. Uncontrolled, careless tourism can do serious harm.
Like what specifically?
Overcrowding is a big one. It leads to pollution, literal wear and tear on ancient structures. These are common issues worldwide, unfortunately.
So what are the solutions? What steps can actually be taken to find that balance?
To get that balance right, the sources point to a few key strategies. Things like limiting how many people can visit at once, controlling access points, using clear signs to guide people and explain how to behave respectfully.
Okay.
Educating local communities, too, so they understand the value and fragility of what's in their backyard. And crucially, developing solid, long-term, sustainable tourism policies. It's not easy.
No, sounds complex.
The goal has to be doing both things at once: promoting these amazing places and protecting them, making sure they're still here for generations way down the line.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway here?
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground. From defining heritage to its global impact, the challenges, the individual roles, it seems clear it's way more than just history.
Definitely.
From ancient Anatolia shaping daily life today to the work of people now and groups like UNESCO, it's not just about dusty relics. It feels more like a living conversation, right? A teacher, a guide for us now.
Exactly. And maybe here's something to think about. If historical heritage is both a teacher and a guide, what new lessons, what new directions might it show you about your future? If you look at it not just as something finished, but as maybe a living blueprint, something to mull over.